Screen Time Stories is presented by Pinwheel. With Pinwheel, you get to set limits on your child's smartphone to match their maturity level. As your child grows, you can open up more features to guide their independence. There are many options that come with a Pinwheel smartphone, like allowing approved contacts only, remotely monitoring messages, selecting expert-vetted apps based on professional guidance, and scheduling modes to keep your kids living in the moment. Connect authentically with a Pinwheel smartphone for kids and teens. For a 10% discount, use code PODCAST10 at checkout.
Hello, welcome back. I'm so excited to launch our 4th season. I'm Julie Tripp, a mom on a journey to figure out how to be a good parent in spite of all the changes that I and my kids face every day with technology. And I hope that you can learn alongside me. I'm feeling pretty humbled by the experts who have helped us understand the nuances of parenting with tech. So far, I've had Catherine Nibbs, a child trauma psychotherapist, who shared her insight on how the attachment theory influences kids and their interaction with technology. I've had Clayton Cranford, a 20-year law enforcement veteran, who gave us advice on kids and tech from his professional perspective. Dr. Bradley Zeikerman of Stanford Medicine Children's Health, telling us about the impact that screens have on our kids' mental health and the correlation in the rise of suicides in youth. I've also had Sarah McDougall of Wilderness to Wild, who shared how to talk to our kids about body safety online and in real life. We talked about how to handle digital porn with Fight the New Drug and Kristen Jensen of Defend Young Minds, which is a pretty relevant topic since the Playboy magazine days are long gone. I've had Dr. Michael Rich, founder of the Digital Wellness Lab, who talked us through creating and keeping a quality connection with our kids and teens. Also, the author and public speaker Simone Heng, who gave us research-based advice on navigating authentic connections with each other in the digital age. Licensed therapist Tessa Stuckey came on a few times, sharing her wisdom from working with teens and screens every day. And also digital wellness expert Julia Storm talked us through topics like media mindfulness. And that's just to name a few. I'm so humbled. It's amazing. Some of these interviews literally made me fangirl out a little bit, to the point that in one interview with Dr. Michael Rich, I forgot to hit the record button until about halfway through. I'm so embarrassed to say that out loud. My point is that I feel overwhelming gratitude that these people who are dedicating their life's work to guiding parents like me and you, they've made such a hugely positive impact on my relationship with my 15 and 10-year-old kids. And I hope that by producing these episodes, it's been helpful to a few other parents as well. Now, one person I've yet to give kudos to is actually my guest today. Jenifer Joy Madden joined me last season to give a broad overview of babies and screen time. And she had so many nuggets of wisdom that of all the episodes, I had so many people tell me how much they gained from her episode. Just amazing. So getting to it today, I came across a new study just published in JAMA Medicine, and so I reached out to Jenifer immediately. This study looks at developmental delays in babies and toddlers in relation to how much time they spend with screens. So at this point, I'm sure we all probably have an idea of where this is heading, but there's a sneaky little sentence about halfway through the study that I wanted to ask Jenifer about specifically. And I asked her about it for an entire episode. So before going any further, let me introduce Jenifer. She's a health journalist, digital media educator, community advocate, and a parent. And I respect her immensely for who she is and what she stands for. Also, she wrote 2 books, The Durable Human Manifesto, Practical Wisdom for Living and Parenting in the Digital World, and How to Be a Durable Human, Revive and Thrive in the Digital Age Through the Power of Self-Design. She also gave an incredible TEDx talk, which you can find the link for in my show notes. But visit her website at durablehuman.com to see the full scope of her work. Okay, let's hear from Jenifer. I wanted to talk to you today about something a little bit more nuanced. We both saw a study come out in August, and then you were just mentioning another one in September that sort of backs this body of research. There is some new research showing that, so we already know that screens and babies don't mix. There's like maybe one exception if you're FaceTiming with a relative or, a good friend or something like that. I think that's like the only exception, right? When we're talking about very young babies and toddlers.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
And so we kind of already know this. You were on a prior season with me, which was, so insightful. And I got so much out of that episode, so many little details. But I was reading through this new research that came out, and they were kind of saying the same thing that we had already talked about. And we're like, okay, yeah, it's nice to feel validated in our beliefs and our understandings of what science has already told us. And there was this one little nugget that we're going to talk about today. It said that there was a subgroup of moms. It talked about moms specifically. Those that had a lower household income or a lower educational level. So, like socioeconomically impacted. And then the other key piece was those with postpartum depression. That subgroup of moms tended to allow their kiddos, their tiny little babies, like 1, 2, 3-year-olds, they tended to allow their babies to have more screen time, like excessive screen time. And so I just thought that was interesting because I think that there's a lot of reasons why that could happen. Daycare is horribly expensive. And if you're already a lower income earner and you need to put your toddler in daycare, then, that can be difficult. That's an extra constraint. Or, if you're dealing with postpartum depression, maybe it's an easy way to, allow your baby to have entertainment by giving them a tablet and then, not having to make that engagement yourself. So I think we can talk about both the, lower income and postpartum as a group because like the economy is not great right now. I think that there's a lot of crossover where somebody with postpartum depression might also be dealing with like financial constraints. So yeah, anyways, I just found that really interesting. Tell me about your thoughts on that.
Yes, yes. Well, it was so interesting, as you say, to have these 2 studies come out within a month of each other in one of the most reputable journals that there are for pediatrics, JAMA Pediatrics. And it just verifies what some of us have known intuitively, but unfortunately, a lot of people take screen viewing very lightly for their babies, and they think it doesn't have any long-term effects. And as you say, with babies in particular, because their brains are developing very, very quickly, they adapt to their environment, they mold to their environment. And if they have this 2-dimensional screen environment most of the time, they're missing out on all that exploration that they would do with all their senses, and mostly staring at the moms and the loved ones' faces to learn how to speak. That's why there's a lot of language delay these days, because yes, screens misplace that. They displace that special face-to-face relationship and that server and return back and forth. It starts with cooing. I mean, once you hear the little babble when you say something, and then they just have the littlest babble, your instinct would be to exclaim, to be really excited. But if the child is absorbed in a screen, there's none of that back and forth interaction. And so that's the issue right there. And when you're dealing with low income environments, people sometimes have two jobs, and they're just running from place to place and trying to figure out what to do with the baby, even though they love them so much and they want to be with them, but they just can't. And so therefore, daycare environments actually are positively associated with better language development and better child brain development, because there are people there that are interacting, little people and the big people in the daycare settings. So when one can't afford daycare, that would be beneficial to the child. But if somebody can afford it, that's when, because of what we're seeing in these studies, trying to get creative, perhaps reaching out amongst your peers to figure out if maybe people can share the daycares, of the other children. Like if you're off on Saturday, they have to work on Saturday, perhaps you can share. So it's true that society doesn't support us very well. It's expensive. Daycare is expensive. But because of what we're learning, we need to understand that turning to screens, while easy and inexpensive, is detrimental to the brain development of the child. And so that's the income side. The depression side is different, but can be related. A lot of depression comes from financial strain and stress, relational problems, and that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just what happens. It just bubbles up from inside. People are a little bit more apt to be depressed. And that's where moms have to understand that they're crucial to their baby's development. They aren't side players. They're the main show. And so if they feel themselves losing touch, going down, unable to cope, then it's time to get help. And, I don't know if you want to talk about a particular example that shows what happens and why the depression is related to when the screen's starting showing up. I can, I'm happy to share that.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the example is, very ironically, a new mom of a baby, and this mom has had a 2 and a 4-year-old. So you can imagine the household. That's why the more kids, sometimes the more stress. So it might be like, oh, I didn't have depression with my first 2. Well, probably because it wasn't maximum pressure with that third one. So maybe the third one just pushed over the edge. So this particular person, her name is Lori. She was an actual early interventionist. She worked with families of little babies to see if they had autism or autism-like, behavior, and trying to figure that out and what to do for them, provide services. So anyway, Lori, who was prone to depression earlier in her life, she had the third baby. She was excited, as you are, but as the weeks went on, she felt herself just descending into this feeling of, not exactly I'm worthless, but more like I can't do anything. I feel like I have no energy. I feel like I don't care about anything. And at about 6 weeks, she realized, wait a minute, this has lasted a number of weeks. And that's the key. That's the difference between the baby blues, which we all get when we have the baby. We have a spectrum of emotions, and sometimes we get down, even when we have a beautiful new baby and everybody's fawning over us and the baby. But in this case, her feelings of kind of despair, disconnection went on for more than a couple weeks. She recognized this in herself. And so she reached out for help at that point, talked to her healthcare professional, started to go on the path of in terms of therapy and medication in her case. But here's the point. When she was feeling really down, like she couldn't do anything, the 2-year-old would watch TV And so she put the baby in front of the TV in a bouncy chair for hours in the morning. It became like 2.5 hours. And the baby was just staring at that. And that was the most income the baby got. And so after a number of months, she became less depressed because of her treatment. But when she kind of looked up and saw what was going on, that little baby, if it were away from the TV, would scream bloody murder unless the baby was nursing. Wow. So that's what happened. So while she started coming out of her depression, the baby became compulsively attached to video viewing. The baby would scream. Lori had this reaction that she wanted the baby to stop screaming. She actually had some trauma in her own childhood. She hated screaming. And so she couldn't stand it. So she would give the tablet, the TV back. After a while, it became a tablet. Her little one eventually became kind of unmanageable without a tablet. And she didn't know what was going on. Now, I'm going to try to cut to the chase here. She was treating somebody in Sweden whose child was kind of in the same predicament, that if you take away the TV, then the child would get kind of, beside itself and was unmanageable. This person in Sweden said, you know what I tried to do? I tried to take the screens away from my child. I just was desperate. I didn't know what to do. And guess what? Within days, the child started calming down and would actually look at me and would actually talk again. And it was amazing. Lori, the child was 3.5 years, was getting an autism diagnosis at that point because the child had gone so far down into this pathway of disconnection and attachment to video content that the baby, this child was being labeled because the kid started developing autistic-like behavior of not responding to name, losing all language, was just going down just a really difficult path. And so they went for services, and the child got a label diagnosis. Well, anyway, she's like, I don't care about labels of diagnosis. I'm going to take away the screens. And the whole household did it. And the baby, this child eventually, I have to say, this is screen induced. The child came out of it. And today, Max is a beautiful, 10, 11-year-old and doing great. Wow. Very much. His IQ score went up 40 points. That's not supposed to happen. And it did. And so Lori now is a specialist in treating children with screen-induced syndrome, which looks like an autistic-like situation. And then they're like, look at the household. Look at how much the child is getting. And it turns out more than an hour a day. Only an hour a day can do it. Wow. And so, so it's pretty amazing. So Lori, her advice is to go ahead and if you feel yourself descending into depression or anxiety, depression and anxiety are now linked. So if you're so anxious, you can't even think of anything else, that's anxiety. That's when it's a medical condition that requires medical help. And so it's like, please don't wait if you're a mom. Please don't wait. And please don't be embarrassed because guess what? 1 in 8 moms are apt to have postpartum depression or anxiety, or even develop those during pregnancy. So even if you start feeling like at a total loss when you're pregnant, go get help.
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple of key takeaways for me that stood out with your stories. Mm-hmm. One is regardless of whether the struggle is with income or depression or anxiety, I think that having a village is essential. And so, whether it's like sharing that you are struggling with certain facets and being able to have that, sense of being not alone, because there's a very good chance that somebody in your village is also dealing with the exact same thing. Or, it's a matter of like, let's trade off. I'm I'm in such a bad place. Like I'm not engaging with my baby. Like, can you help? Or it's, I need to work this Saturday. Like, can we do a babysitting trade? I feel like a village is just essential. And the other thing that you mentioned earlier is intuition. And I think that a lot of these shows that are created for babies, they seem so harmless and even beneficial. They talk about shapes and naming colors. And I think that we are misled to believe that it's a positive thing that we can do for our kids. And there's not a real, I guess, the voice of the show. They have this whole marketing team that makes it seem great, but the voice of reason is just, it's a very quiet voice that we have to find within ourselves. There's no marketing team going, wait a minute, slow down on the screens for babies. This isn't healthy. So following intuition and building a village and then really utilizing it and being a part of that, I think would be, two huge pieces. And then of course, if it's more than the baby blues, if it is postpartum depression, it needs to be treated seriously. It is something that, I think that there's that really major distinction between I'm feeling a little down and I need help. So anyways, can you tell us anything about what to do if you get to that point of deciding that this has been lasting a little longer than just, like I'm not bouncing back right now. This is lasting too long.
Yeah, well, you do have to sometimes we just want to be super moms and push through it. And so that's where that intuition comes in, where it's actually a form of honesty with yourself to admit I'm not superhuman. I need help. I need to say something about this. It doesn't mean that I'm a weak person because I'm having these struggles. You could even consider it more of a disservice to yourself if you don't say anything, if you don't admit it, because you're not getting help. And the deal is, that's very crucial at that time of your baby's life, that you are present. The baby can't be put on the back burner at that point. The baby really needs to develop that bond and attachment with you, so the baby is, self-regulated is the word for it, and they're co-regulated with you. They're reaching out. They really need to see your face, and they need to have that touch connection, the eye-to-eye connection, and that sort of thing. And so if you're staring out the window and being sad, the baby still needs you. And so it's kind of that responsibility thing to step up and face up the fact that, yeah, you're not perfect and you need help. And guess what? Loved ones probably they're going to support you. They're going to want to help. But if you don't verbalize it and you never admit it and you just keep it inside, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt the baby.
And your loved ones won't know about it. You said superhuman, and it made me think of all of the times that the word supermom is thrown around. And I think that's, such a wonderful intention. But I wonder if the recipient can actually be more, it can throw them more into that pit where they're feeling like they have this title that they need to uphold now. And so being able to tell your person, look, I'm glad you see me that way, but I am not super mom right now. I'm actually struggling. Like maybe, it's important to be honest with ourselves and with others. But keep going. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. So that's really important. If you feel yourself descending, or if somebody else notices that you've got that problem. So I guess right now we're talking about people with serious postpartum or perinatal depression that they can reach out. And I suppose I should mention 988 right now, which is the new number. It's 3 numbers, kind of like 911, but it's 911 for your mental health. And you actually can call 988 when you're desperate yourself and tell the person on the phone what 988 connects you with is a crisis counseling center in your location, in your region, because it goes by your area code. It's completely anonymous, but your call is going to be shunted to the right crisis center by your area code. They're not going to know who you are or anything like that, but you can talk to them, whoever answers the phone, tell them your predicament. They'll be familiar with postpartum depression, and they can connect you with resources. And that's fantastic. I can't be more excited about that. That's 1 year old. I write about it on my website, durablehuman.com. You can read more about 988, but please know about that. That's a kind of a magic bullet for your mental health. It's pretty wonderful. So that's one thing you can do.
It's free,
go ahead.
too, right?
That's free.
So,
Absolutely
if
free.
you do have that double whammy, the low income and the depression, then that is a very immediate way to access help.
Yep, that's right. And I don't know, we could talk a little bit about supporting somebody that you see is descending into depression and anxiety.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You were talking about your friend Lori, and if I have a friend who's exhibiting some behaviors that I feel like this just doesn't seem like her, what could I do or say?
Yeah, well, actually, there's a group called Active Minds, and it's a mental health peer-to-peer support group for mostly, it started out as young people, so that would be on college campuses, and now it's even in high schools, but we can borrow from them. And they're nationwide. They have 1,000 different locations across the country, and they have been recognized now by MTV, believe it or not, for a new method that they have for helping somebody in need. And it's so simple. Listen, it used to be called VAR, but now it's called ASK, A-S-K. I just got a press release on it, and this today or yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it's really, this is such great timing to talk about it. ASK stands for acknowledge, support, and keep in touch. So if you're a friend of someone who's struggling, and you can see it because their behavior has changed and they're not themselves, and they're supposed to be joyful because they have a new baby, but they keep crying. The strategy here is to acknowledge their feelings and to validate their feelings and tell them you believe in them, and you recognize that they're very brave to talk about it, and you can sympathize with them. So that's the acknowledge part. That's the A of ask. And the next letter is S, which is support. Now here's where you can have in the back of your mind, yes, there's 988. You can jump to 988 if you want, but you may suggest strategies that we all can use to help manage our emotions, to make ourselves feel better, cheer ourselves up. Because trying those strategies could be all your friend needs to kind of get out of a rut, an emotional rut.
Yeah.
And then
you actually have some strategies, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You want to go through those before we get to the K?
Okay, sure.
And what I like about some of your strategies is that they do apply to both low income and people who are dealing with anxiety and depression.
Right. So I think those ones, what you want to do is, so we're going to talk now, we're going to back up a little bit, talk about yourself. Let's say you just feel like you're going out of your skin. You feel like you can't handle anything. You feel like you're just kind of losing it in general. You're either so bummed or you're so just wired and worried. So you have to kind of go to some mindfulness techniques. Now, I want to tell you that another study that's really exciting has come out, and it said those women that learn mindfulness-based stress reduction in pregnancy verifiably had less anxiety and depression once they had the baby. So beautiful. So what we can talk about today is some of these techniques that they use in mindfulness-based stress reduction, and you're going to be surprised how simple they are. So the first one on the list is to breathe. And I really mean, and then these ones I'm going to mention are you're with your baby, you're actively involved in parenting and mothering when you can still do these techniques.
Yeah.
And that is breathing. You can do the simple one, which is breathe in for like a square breathing pattern. Breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, and wait for 4 seconds. So just think of that 4-second square, and that can help you calm down. It brings in, it collects your emotions and allows you to do that. And honestly, that's like 16, 20 seconds. You can do that within your family. Another thing is sort of like smooth out your environment, calm your environment. So you may want to put on some soothing music just to get your mind kind of calmed down, and maybe even smell a wonderful smell. So if you've got some flowers sitting on the counter by any chance, to smell those, smell something lavender. And that might be a way to sort of get yourself out of the situation quickly. And with music, this happened with my daughter a couple weeks ago. She was feeling a little at wit's end, and she put on some perky music, and she actually she just sort of danced, just to a happy song. And so she was able to deal with her toddler better. And he was happy to dance with her too.
Aww.
So those are so simple things you can just do. A lot of us do have phones, even low income people do, and you may be able to access a happy song very quickly with your phone.
Right.
And then another really easy thing to do is to get out of the house. Either you step out, but you don't want to leave your baby. So go out into the sunshine and the fresh air, because a lot of studies, many studies, including the 2 we mentioned at the beginning, do show that if you're in the sunshine and in nature, it does calm you down. It actually calms the baby down too. So that's really an easy one to do.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are some.
And I interrupted your ask. So what? So that's the things those are some things that we can suggest. But what is the K for when you're talking to a friend and trying to help them out?
Yeah, K is for keep in touch. And so that means, and that's on college campuses, kids have been frustrated because they'll go into counseling or they'll talk to a teacher, and the professor is so busy they can't get back. Yeah. So when you're in this personal situation where you have talked to your friend about these emotional issues, to really try to check on them again.
Yeah.
Just I saw a beautiful study once with veterans in distress. There was a program where somebody would text these people kind of on a regular basis. And there was a huge difference in the vets that got texts of encouragement, like, hey, how are you? And thinking about you, and those that didn't. Wow. Look how simple that is.
Yeah, that's so simple. Yeah. But it lets you know that somebody is thinking about you, and, I'm just guessing, but I wonder if it makes the person who is struggling feel like they have a little bit more worth, a little bit more value, and that can sort of give them that little breath to maybe take their own next steps and do what they need to do to get into a better place.
Yeah. It has to do with somebody as being noticed, being, being, and that's gets back to the A of acknowledging. Yeah. The acknowledgement part. And then, so there are other, for people that are not emotionally, in emotional distress, but mostly financial distress, and they have to get on that Zoom call because they're going to get fired if they don't. Those are the people that maybe have a job, have a little bit more income, but have problems where they maybe feel forced to have to hand over a device to their babies or sit them in front of a TV. And there is an alternative. And that is especially for those that have infants, babies, and it's called the yes space.
I love this. And you talked about this before, where we have maybe something like a baby gate, and everything within this gated area is just full of benefits for the baby, and they get to, enjoy themselves and feel entertained and do a little self-soothing if needed. But there's no screens, there's no sharp edges. Everything is just very positive, which I feel like, regardless of whether you're dealing with depression or low income or whatever, a yes space sounds like just a good idea for toddlers in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
Toddlers and the little ones that are just beginning to move around and even can just roll around. You have your baby gate or a playpen.
Yeah.
And one of the side effects of putting your baby in front of a screen is that their muscle tones go. They're not strong. They don't have good core strength. And then they're not sitting up. They're not walking as well. None of that stuff is going along as it's supposed to. So when you do have, the yes space is a place for movement. And I think we can't forget the physical health of the child, as well as the mental health. Yeah. And once they're entertaining themselves with their little toys, as opposed to a TV, what they're doing is they're learning how to self-regulate and actually not be entertained by you every second.
So the yes space is amazing. And some of us just don't have the luxury of getting in a lot of time with our babies. But you were saying that that's okay. Like, what's important is what we do when we do have that free time that we can share with them.
It starts with engagement and really paying attention to your baby, really paying attention, being there, not having a phone, not having one eye on your phone, because they're studying your face to be able to learn how to speak. And not only that, they're beginning to self-regulate. Once they know you're there and you're solid, then they feel more comfortable exploring the world. And they can take the world by storm. And they do that by slowly checking things out, with all their senses. They touch them, they feel them, they taste them, they do all that stuff. And so they need to have that inner confidence to go out and explore the world. And that in turn builds their body strength and their brain interconnections and sets them on a really good course.
Jenifer, thank you so much for not only joining me today, but for all of the time and energy you've contributed to helping new parents in the digital age. If you or someone you know needs help, please don't wait another second. 988 is a great resource for anyone dealing with postpartum depression, and it is free. There's so much going on and so many distractions. Just remember that you are the only thing that your baby needs. They want to hear your voice and responses, smell your unique scent, even if you hadn't had a chance to shower, touch your skin and feel your hugs and kisses, and look at your perfect face. All of this wonderful connection, it dissolves when you lift your phone into the space between you and your baby. So I'm wishing all of you new parents the very best, and I hope that researchers can begin working on these impacted subgroups even more so that we can level the playing field for future new parents. Please check out the show notes for a ton of great resources from Jenifer Joy Madden of Durable Human, and you can also find a link to the study that I've been referencing. We have some great guest experts on the show this season, so hit subscribe to make sure you catch each one. Also, pretty please take 2 minutes to review the show. It boosts our visibility, which will allow more parents to find the information. That does it for today. Parents, just remember that your kids don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be good enough.